everyone, welcome to Prisca's Room. I'm your host Prisca, and today we're kicking off an exciting journey into one of Roald Dahl's most awesome stories, Mathilda. This incredible novel, written by the legendary Roald Dahl, is about a super smart little girl who loves books and faces some pretty unfair challenges. It's such a classic, and I'm really thrilled to dive deep into it with you all. With me here, I have two huge fans who are just as pumped as I am to dig into the first chapter, The Reader of Books. Welcome, guys. Yunita and Tristan here.
Hi,
Hi,
How are you guys?
I'm
I'm
good.
good.
How about you?
How about you?
Yeah, I'm good too.
So happy to be here.
Yeah, this chapter is such a great start.
It really is. Roald Dahl just has a way of grabbing you from the very first page. He sets up the words so quickly. So let's just dive right in to kick things off. Can you give us a quick rundown of what happens in this first chapter? Just a snapshot of the key events, telling us who we meet and what goes down.
This chapter basically shows us two kinds of parents. That ones who spoil their kids rotten and the ones who just don't care at all. The person telling the story even says how annoying the supporting parents are. Then we meet Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood, who see their daughter Matilda as nothing more than a scab.
Mathilda Taek is super spelly, really smart and sensitive. She is totally different from her parents who couldn't care less.
By the time she was 1.5, Matilda talked perfectly, and by 3, she taught herself to read using newspaper and magazines. At 4, she was reading really well.
Her dad couldn't buy her a book, asking why she'd one when they hit a TV, so Mathilda just walked to the public library by herself.
She met the librarian, Mrs. Phillips, and asked if she could read. Mrs. Phillips was a bit surprised by such a tiny kid alone, but she said yes.
Mathilda quickly read all the kids' books. Then she started looking for other stuff.
Mrs. Phillips, who'd been watching her for weeks, asked if she needed help. Matilda said she'd finished all the children's books.
Mrs. Phelps was surprised when Mathilda said she'd actually read the books, not just look at pictures. Mathilda even told her she was 4 years and 3 months old.
Matilda then asked for a really good one that grows ups read. A famous one, Mr. Phillips eventually picked out Great Expectations by Charles Dickens for her.
For the next few afternoons, Mrs. Phelps could barely stop watching Mathilda, who was totally lost in the book.
Mr. Phillips found out that Matilda's mother went to play bingo every day and didn't know Matilda was at the library. Matilda's parents didn't even like her reading.
In just a week, Mathilda finished Great Expectations, which was a really thick book.
She loved it and asked if Dickens wrote anything else. Mr. Phillips was amazed and said he wrote a lot.
Wow, that's a fantastic rundown. It really set the scene, doesn't it? The sheer amount of detail packed into this opening chapter is incredible, and you've both done a great job highlighting all those key moments. Now let's talk about the key players. Who are the main characters we meet right off the bat in this first chapter? What's your take on them?
The main one is Mathilda, of course. He's super smart, sensitive, and brilliant. She basically teaches herself to read when she's tiny.
Then there are her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood. They're just totally self-absorbed and neglectful. They see Matilda as a pen like a scab.
And Mrs. Phelps, the librarian, sees kind and quickly sees how special Mathilda is, becoming her quiet helper.
Great character breakdown. You can definitely tell who we're supposed to like and dislike from that. Roald Dahl makes it very clear who the good guys and bad guys are in this initial setup, which is really effective. Now, moving on the bigger picture, what would you say is the main point or idea, the big theme that comes out of the reader of books? What message is Dahl trying to send us?
I think the biggest idea is how different ignorance and intelligence are, and how powerful knowledge can be. The Wormwoods are clueless and don't care, missing Matilda's genius completely.
Mathilda, on the other hand, just loves learning and praises herself, even though her family doesn't support her.
The chapter shows how wanting to learn can really bloom even when things are tough, and how reading can be a huge escape and help you figure out who you are.
There's also a big theme about kids being neglected and how important it is to have adults who care, like Mrs. Phelps.
I completely agree. The differences are so clear, almost shouting at you from the page. It's a powerful message about the value of intellect and kindness. Speaking of the setting, where does the chapter mostly happen? Can you paint a picture for us of these key locations?
Mostly it's at Matilda's house, which is shown as a really sportive place where she is often left alone.
And then there's the public library in the village. That library, particularly here courses, become here safe space, a place to read free.
The library really does feel like a safe haven for Matilda, a refuge from her home life. It's almost a character in itself. I love how Dahl makes those places feel so distant. Now let's talk about a writing trick called juxtaposition. For those who might not be familiar, it's basically placing two contrasting things side by side to highlighting their differences. Where do we see that used well in this chapter? And what effect does it have?
Juxtaposition is super important here. The clearest example is the big difference between Matilda's amazing intelligence and her parents' total lack of smart and how little they care.
Her parents are clueless, they wouldn't even notice. She crowded home with a broken leg, which is a huge contrast to her reading grades expectation at 4.
There is also a storyteller's funny way of complaining about parents who break out their kids, contrast with the much more serious and harmful neglect from the Wormwoods.
And the miserable home environment is but right next to the welcome and entertaining feel of the public library.
That's a great way to break down the juxtaposition. It really drives home what the author wants us to feel. And it makes you realize how truly special Matilda is in her unfortunate circumstances. It's a powerful literary device. What about the point of view in the chapter? Who's telling the story? And how does that affect our understanding of the characters and the plot?
The story is told by an all-knowing narrator, in what we call a third-person omniscient point of view. This narrator knows everything about what the characters are thinking and feeling, even the Wormwood's tribal opinions of Matilda.
What's cool is that the narrator has a real strong opinion and often funny voice. They jump in with comments and even make up scenarios like those sarcastic school reports for the big rigging parents.
Yeah, the narrator is totally wrote Dahl's signature. It adds so much personality and a unique flavor to the story, making it feels like he's sitting right there telling it to us. It really pulls you into his world. Finally, thinking about today and where we are in Indonesia, are there any cultural things or specific references that might feel different to people here compared to, say, someone reading it in the UK or the US? How might an Indonesian audience connect with or interpret some of these elements?
That's a good question, Prisca. While things like bad parenting, loving to read, and how important libraries are pretty much the same everywhere, some little things might feel a bit different.
For example, the idea of doting parents or even revolting offspring might be seen a bit differently depending on how people generally raise kin and show respect here in Indonesia.
And specific Old English books like Great Expectation or The Secret Garden would be known by people in Indonesia who read a lot, but maybe not by everyone, unlike this in place with stronger ties to British literature.
But the overall idea of a smart kin wanting to read grown-up books is something any curious reader anywhere will get.
And the idea of a public library being a super important, safe place for reading is definitely understood and valued everywhere.
That's a good point. It's always cool to see how stories connect with different cultures and how certain nuances might be interpreted differently depending on someone's background. It reminds us how universal some of these themes truly are, even with specific cultural touches. Thank you both so much for sharing your awesome insights on this first chapter of Mathilda. It's been a truly engaging discussion, and you've both shed so much light on the reader of books. We've covered so much from the plot to themes, characters, and even cultural context.
Anytime, it was fun.
Thanks for having me. I love it.
And thank you for the listeners for hanging out with us on the Prisca's Room. Tune in next time as we dive even deeper into Matilda's amazing adventures. You won't want to miss it. Bye!
Bye.